Oh yeah. Hey Daniel, hey Quinn. What's up Twitter? What's up YouTube? And what's up Facebook? Um, I, I don't know even what to say. I have two very, very sad packs that I don't even want to share. To be honest, I mean, I'm just asking the question like, are the kids safe in Michigan, right? I mean, like that guy Jarvis Butts, he killed that girl. I mean, I don't know what's going on up there. You know, I personally don't like the system when it comes to how behavior services are, well, child protective services, behavioral services, anything along that line, right? Anything that requires an additional resource to aid your family, right? With children or elderly or someone with disability or veteran or someone of that in that regard, right? It and I said this a long time ago. If they would allow social workers to do their jobs, a lot of this stuff wouldn't happen. Those people are restricted by resources, and they're often not um, given the necessary authority that they need. Because, see, let me tell you, there is a long time, depending on where you are, between the time that a case is filed or something comes to the attention of a teacher or someone in in at the police station or what have you, right? From the time someone gets any type of notification to the time that case is heard, and then when it is heard, they have such a to me it's just oh my gosh, it's like they want to keep a child with its screwed up parent. It's um, I can't even get the word out. I'm so frustrated with the system when it comes to you know people in need, right? People that require additional assistance, either because their parent is unable to provide what they need, or someone is disabled, or elderly, or juvenile, delinquent, or what have you. You understand what I'm saying? And they oftentimes don't act or react until it's too late, and they don't take this stuff serious enough, or it's just such a like that the goddamn analysis and the test and all that shit that they do. It seem like to me to the testing that they do favors keeping them in the same damn situation that they're in, instead of a testing that would favor you know getting them out of a damn situation. You understand what I'm saying? It's ridiculous. It is damn it ridiculous, right? That's what I was telling Mo. This is where, on her end, she has to, do, how they do. They, before they adjudicate your ass as crazy, it's a whole litany of shit they go through. And you see this motherfucker clearly over on across from you, batting their eyes, twitching in the damn chair, talking crazy, looking up. His ass is crazy. Hell, we can solve all of that. Put his ass on one of them brain scans and see if the shit, if it's too much juice in one area, or the damn parts are some too big and some too small. Shit, yeah, they'll tell you this. He crazy. And they all, and it's just, oh my gosh, it's too much for me, right? I'm glad I don't have to use, or I didn't have to use those particular metrics in order to make a decision on any goddamn thing, you know. Mm-mm. But yeah, but it's very sad. So I'm gonna get started with these packs, right? And I'm just gonna let the videos now. A lot of this would be repetitive, but again, I like to listen. Um, about the same story from various sources. That way, I can get the complete picture. Um, and we also have the video of I guess her first appearance, what have you, right? So, but anyway, it'll eventually roll to those videos, and make sure you hit that like button. I haven't asked for that in a minute. And be greeted today. But this is crazy. And yeah, these are black parents. Not to say it doesn't happen with white folks, because it does. But these are just happen to be black parents.
Obviously, we're here to update you on the very horrific case of the 3 children in Pontiac who had been basically abandoned in a home. I'll kind of give you a little bit of an update on where we are, and more specifically where the kids are, how they're doing, and the kinds of things we're asking for on behalf of the kids. So um, one of the first questions is that we've heard from a lot of people is, where was the dad during this? So to back up a little bit, the father had been incarcerated for a period of time and had no contact with the kids. When he came out, he sought the opportunity to reunite with the kids, and actually filed some legal papers in court to try to get visitation and those kinds of things. A consent agreement was arrived at in 2022, but the mother still would not allow him to see the kids. So that's what we've learned so far, at least preliminarily. We're going to go back and double check all these timelines and that kind of information. So he, in essence, had lost contact with the kids. And that's where that stood. So we've had questions about that. The other questions that we've had was, who were the other people potentially dropping food at the house other than the mother? So far, again, the investigation is pretty layered and complex, given that it's going over years. But it appears that those are companies like an Instacart or a DoorDash, things like that. So, so far, none of the people that were coming to the house had any awareness that there were kids inside or the situation in which they were delivering to. Obviously, the question was somebody dropping food off knowing there's kids there? No information at this point leads us to believe that. The kids were forensically interviewed, with our partners at Care House. They've already been seen once at McLaren. We intend to have them at a much more detailed both physical and mental health kind of checkup, if you will, that will happen hopefully this week. When our detectives saw them at their interview at Care House, they were already making amazing progress, having had some tender love, having had some supportive care, having been put in new clothing and some basic hygiene. The one detective said that the little girl was talking quite a bit. So that's super exciting to see that happening. And as it relates to being in the house, the only one of the three that ever came out was the young boy, and he came out twice. Once because he wanted to feel the grass, which by itself is heartbreaking, and a second time to check the mail. So you wouldn't do this to an animal, let alone your child. So, just to hear that he came out to touch the grass is just crushing, soul crushing on so many levels. As it relates to the house, we have obviously released pictures. I'll get my technical expert up. You've already seen some of these pictures. I rolled that little mouse, but it didn't want to cooperate. So inside of the home, as I had mentioned with these pictures, trash was piled, in some places 3 and 4 foot high. Everything was covered with feces and trash. The toilet had become non-functional, and the bathtub was filled with feces. That's the kind of situation these poor kids had been living in for years, not just hours or days, for years. And so when you have the complete lack of hygiene, a complete breakdown of basic living conditions that they were subjected to. And to get a little deeper into that, detectives have narrowed down the initial abandonment they believe to be somewhere in the spring to summer of 2020. Obviously, COVID played a little part in the disconnect potentially with schools and school communications. In 2020, the mother dropped off some trash bags, gloves, and Febreze, and that was about the last thing related to hygiene. 2020, in the height of COVID, okay? Towards the end, the children apparently were getting a loaf of bread dropped off that was intended to last 3 to 4 days. So, obviously on so many levels, the conditions are horrendous and the situation terrible. So what we're trying to do in the meantime, and as it relates specifically to the case, the preliminary report has been turned over to the prosecutor. We're adding some more stuff for them. They're in the process of determination. When I heard about this, I called her on the weekend and let it know it was coming, and she has her staff queued up, and they're in that process. As it relates to the kids, the first thing we wanted to do is obviously get them safe and to get them clean and get them in clothes. And I will say we have one of the most generous communities, I think, in the world. We put on there that we needed clothing, and this is just a tiny sample of what we've received. At the office of another office of ours, we have bags and bags. So we don't need any more clothing. We greatly appreciate it. The family and the kids greatly appreciate it. And so we're kind of pivoting now to financial support. And we have put up a link, if you will, to the charity Mission Oakland, and 100% of it will go to the kids. Unlike some of the traditional fundraising methodologies you see out there, they take a percentage, 100% of this will go to the kids. What I am asking is, again, our generous viewers and listeners out there and readers, we're looking for a law firm that would set up a trust fund so that we can take 100% of what we receive in donations for these kids and put it in a trust that can be administered, that can take care of maybe their medical bills, mental health visits, and if there's any overage, maybe set some money aside for their future education. This can be a long-term situation. And so we'd like to be able to kind of hand the baton to a trust fund that will manage it in a way that makes sure it's just the kids. Not suggesting anybody else would do anything with it, but we're looking for a mechanism where we can hand this off. So if there's a firm out there that would like to set up a trust fund for these kids, then we'll deposit any receipts that we have in a very short period of time. I think we've already got $15,000 to $20,000 in on our donations. So we're going to, obviously have some real dollars to be able to give these kids, but that won't make up for the 3-4 years that they've been subjected to these conditions. I've said this more than once, but you see those videos of animals in just terrible conditions on commercials, and it pulls at your heartstrings. Imagine maybe by 10 living in what we showed you, and then play it out over years, not days or weeks. So it's hard to wrap your head around this one. So there's going to be a lot of long-term, I think, mental health and educational needs and things that we want to try to help with the family to get to that point. The other thing I'd like to mention, the family is asking, apparently, some of the folks that are now involved with the kids that didn't know, that's another question we've asked, they didn't know what was going on with the kids. They had been told by her that somebody else was babysitting the children or other kinds of things. So they were unaware what was happening so far, according to our investigation. But what they're asking is they feel like they're being hounded by media outlets. So they'd like to get some privacy for their kids and the grandkids and the aunts, and those folks want just a little bit of a safe bubble, if you would. So they asked that, which of course we're going to do. Now, on another front, all of us are asking, how the heck did this happen? How did we lose 3 kids? How'd they fall through the system? The community, the relatives, the schools, how did no one know? And the easiest answer we could come up with, and I put on my old legislative hat, and thank heavens we've got a person on our staff that also had worked in the legislature, and we examined the school code, and there's some gaps that we think in part allowed this to happen. And so what we're going to suggest is there needs to be some changes in state law. Right now, basically, there is no specific duty required that is triggered by certain actions. So what I mean by that is a school district, in this case, received a request for records from another school in Pontiac, but no verification the children ever moved to that school. And so at some point, when they didn't show up, they were just dropped off the enrollment of the school that sent the transcripts. So no one knew that they were nowhere. And so what we're proposing, and we're already communicating to a potential bill sponsor, is some amendments to the school code that will close that communication gap so that before a child is unenrolled, they have to obtain written confirmation that child's someplace else. That doesn't happen now. And that's what happened here, it appears. It's still, again, being investigated because we're going back years and trying to check records. But it looks like based on that request for records, neither of them knew where that child was and presumed, I guess, that the other one had the children. So the other thing, this is the specific language, but it goes into basically filling that gap, closing that hole so that if a child doesn't show up at a school for a period of time, then it triggers a follow-up where they have to communicate with either a truancy officer or law enforcement to begin an examination of what happened to these kids. Where are they? It's unbelievable to think that we've got 3 kids that fell off everybody's map for years. So that goes to the second part, as I said, within 20 days, the sending school that sent those records has to notify the truancy officer if they have not received written confirmation that child is someplace else safe. So it shortens the window. First trigger is 10 days, second trigger is 20 days. And obviously this can be worked on, amended, or changed by the legislature. We're just suggesting there's gotta be some accountability measures so we don't have kids fall through the cracks in such a horrific way. And that is the direct donation link to the children and their needs. So that's kind of the basics of where we are. As I said, we're going to have some follow-up investigative things we're going to be doing. We're going to check much more deeply the children's physical and mental well-being. Obviously, we're going to need to get an educational assessment on where they are. Without any education for a period of years, you know, you hear how many kids across this country fell way behind from 1 year of COVID. Imagine where these kids are. And so, you know, we don't have a clue. Where are they educationally in terms of acuity and also mental health and all the developmental things that happen in those critical years? You know, we don't know. And they're going to have needs with that. So it's a big undertaking, a big process, and one of the most tragic long-term abuse situations I've ever seen. I've been in this a long time. So that's kind of where we sit. Questions?
What did mom say or do to make her children so scared of leaving the house for years?
They were just scared. I don't know that she said anything particular that she's admitted to us, but they were afraid to leave. I know that much.
What's the latest with mom? I know the prosecutor's looking at this, but where is she? What's going on?
She's in custody with us.
Is she cooperating?
Yeah, I mean, she's talking to us, but we've got some follow-up secondary things that we want to ask her based on more information that's come to our attention since this originally surprisingly came to our attention when we were thinking we were going to check on her welfare and found 3 kids.
Any idea on the state of her mental health?
I have no information or background that she's got any mental health challenges, but obviously that will be all part of the case.
It's a message for everyone who's stepped up to make donations, whether that's been financial or all these supplies that have come in.
My heartfelt warm thank you to everybody that has stepped up. I mean, as I said, in very short order, we got a ton of clothing, so much we had to say, okay, we got enough of that. Let's pivot to other ways we can help, and people have jumped in on that. I honestly think we have one of the most generous communities in the world, and I've seen it time and time again. You know, I mean, this goes back more than 20 years when I went to Ground Zero after 9/11. And so many police and fire families were decimated. And at that time, there was no mechanism. They immediately had their livelihood cut off, and these families had no income whatsoever. And so I started raising money in this area for the New York firefighters and police officers. And we raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in very short order and gave it to those families before they got any assistance from anyone else. That's this community. That's the heart and soul of this community. So, you know, I just say thank you.
What about the landlord? Usually when you're renting, the landlord or somebody will come in and do a maintenance check. What are they saying?
Well, the landlord's the one that actually called in a welfare check. You know, he said he hadn't heard from who he thought was the tenant for a period of time, and she hadn't paid her rent since October. So, I mean, typically a landlord would respond if there's complaints about something not working. But he was unaware of any of this. He actually sent us there to check on what he thought was his tenant. And that's when we found the kids.
And what's going to happen to that apartment or that townhouse right now? I mean, is it dangerous for the people that are, you know, next door? It's a kind of compact area.
Yeah, that will probably be up to the health department and other folks that will have to make a determination of how they move that forward. I mean, when we processed that scene for evidentiary value, our folks were wearing hazmat suits. I mean, on every level, it's a biohazard.
How about any debriefing for the officers who found that? Do they go through any kind of debriefing? That's got to be kind of hard for them.
It's horrific. I mean, again, I've been in this business a long time. The worst thing for our folks, our men and women on the front lines, is when they have an issue with kids. because most of them, bring that home in a way that connect. They look at their kid and they see the other kid in this situation, and they just begin to, personalize it, and it tears them up. So thankfully, we've got a great peer-to-peer program, and that was initiated immediately once we learned what the situation was, to both debrief them and make sure that they have some opportunity to process what they were involved in and how to, in a healthy way, move forward. After you see some of the terrible things we see in our world, homicides and abuse, you'll never unsee it, but you have to find a healthy way to process it and then take another step forward and go back out and continue to do your job.
Were comfort dogs like Kelli brought into the kids at the hospital and things, and how did that go?
Yes, I think 2 came right away, and that's been, here Kelli sits in this corner. Our comfort dogs have been involved in so many tragedies. When I started this program, I thought, well, this will be helpful here and there. It's almost a daily thing. It is daily if you consider how it helps our people. But, think where these dogs have been. They've been to Oxford. They've been to the splash pad scene. They've been to suicides. They've been to, one thing after another. And I think they make an amazing difference.
Do you have any information at all as to why this mom would do this for years to her children?
Not at this point. They're going to, again, try to ask her some more questions. That's all part of the investigation, how or why. I don't think there's never going to be an answer any of us can understand or accept on the why. How do you? Anybody that's a parent looks at their kids and thinks, what a blessing, what a gift. And to allow this to happen, I don't think anyone, whether you have kids or not, will ever wrap your head around. But, maybe we can get some insight what she was thinking, but it will never satisfy any of us.
Do we know where she was living while they were living there?
Elsewhere in Pontiac.
Like a friend's house? Was it a family member?
Who was she living with?
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably won't get into that at this point.
It seems just kind of elaborate that she'd go to all these lengths trying to hide it from her family and all this. What stands out about this to you, Sheriff?
Yeah, the complexity of it, the length of it, on so many levels, it's just hard, again, to wrap your head around. If you don't want to be a parent, then there's mechanisms in place. There's methodologies to either give your child up for adoption or to other family members. There's never an excuse to abuse your child or abandon your kids. There just isn't. There's so many people that are just wanting a child in their life out there. And I know there's, a lot of kids that haven't been adopted, but anything's better than this. If that's not in your wheelhouse to be a parent, then, let someone else have a chance at that role.
Thank you.
In the interactions with the children the last couple of days, does it seem like the children knew that they were being abused, or did they have any idea of reality outside of the house?
Yeah, I think that was their reality. They had no adult contact, and especially when you back up the ages, they're pretty young, and mom tells you to do something when you're, 11, 8, whatever the ages were when this all started. You're probably think, well, I guess maybe this is what happens, or this is normal. This is not normal. But, they had no benchmark. They had nothing to compare it against.
There was a TV on, all that sort of stuff that they have.
Yes. Yep. But as I said, the toilet and the bathtub were non-functional.
All right, next up, everyone, we want to go out to Pontiac, Michigan. This is where the Oakland County Sheriff is speaking on a case and an investigation where a mom is accused of leaving alone her kids in a neglected home for years. Let's listen on Live Now from Fox. Some of this content could be very, very hard to really retain here. So viewer discretion is advised as we learn the details of this case.
Agreement was arrived at in 2022, but the mother still would not allow him to see the kids. So that's what we've learned so far, at least preliminarily. We're going to go back and double check all these timelines and that kind of information. So he, in essence, had lost contact with the kids. And that's where that stood. So we've had questions about that. The other questions that we've had was, who were the other people?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming and thank you for your patience. My name is David Williams. I'm the Chief Assistant here at the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office. Standing here with us are Assistant Prosecutor Kanika Ferenczi, Assistant Prosecutor Lauren Benninger, Chief of our Special Victims Unit, Sarah Green, our Chief of Administration, Betsy Haig, and of course, Prosecutor McDonald. We're also joined by detectives who've been involved in the case from the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. That's Lieutenant Sam Marsban and Detective John Brish. Prosecutor McDonald will announce the charging decision today and take your questions. But before she does that, I want to remind everyone that charges are only allegations and the defendant is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. Also, the details in the prosecutor's remarks today come from the swear to in 50th District Court earlier today. Prosecutor McDonald.
Thank you. Good afternoon. First, I'd like to announce that we have authorized 3 charges of first-degree child abuse against Kelli Bryant, a 34-year-old resident of Pontiac. My office has already advised the court in the neglect proceedings that we will be asking to terminate the defendant's parental rights. In every case of child abuse, my office focuses first and foremost on the best interest of the child or children and on holding those responsible for abuse accountable. The three children in this case suffered unimaginable abuse and neglect over a long period of time. Thankfully, they've now been rescued from that, and our first priority has been and will continue to be their safety and well-being. I want to briefly address, though, why we're here. Since the first announcement over the weekend by the sheriff, this case has captured the attention of the people across our community, our county, our state, and even internationally, because people are rightfully concerned about the welfare of these children. And we're holding this press conference because, like all other decisions, we balance the interests of public safety, media attention and inquiries, and balancing everyone's right to a fair trial, which is why the events and facts that are disclosed here today are strictly confined to what's already been placed on the record in the swear to this morning in the 50th District Court. When their circumstances became public, including the photos of the home, although law enforcement did not identify the defendant, she was quickly identified on social media and also has been reported in other news media outlets, which is why we are naming her today. We have recently, luckily, been fortunate enough to, for the first time ever, hire our public information officer, Jeff Watrick, who's in the back of the room. Many of you have already spoken to and will continue to, and we're lucky to have him. The children are currently staying with a relative. All 3 children received immediate medical attention at a local hospital, and they were interviewed by trained forensic interviewers at Care House. Considering what they've experienced, they appear to be doing okay. Obviously, the trauma here is significant, and my office, including our victim services section, will make sure these children are supported during this process. Today, the charges are 3 counts of child abuse in the first degree. This is the most serious charge for child abuse. And if convicted, Ms. Bryant could face a sentence of up to life in prison. In the swear-to this morning, on the record, it was stated that in 2019, suspect Kelli Bryant was living at the home, which I'm not disclosing the address at this time, in Pontiac, Michigan, with her 4 children. At some point between 20 and 2021, the suspect moved out of her home, leaving 3 of her children abandoned in that location, while 1 of her children went to live with their father. On February 14th, 2025, police were called to the home by the landlord. Police learned that the landlord was concerned for the welfare of Ms. Bryant, who had not paid rent on the property since October of 2024. Police entered with the landlord and discovered her 3 children, ages 12, 13, and 15. Her daughters were hiding in a bathroom that was filled with feces, piles of trash, and completely non-functional, while her son was hiding in another room. Police were astonished to find anyone in the location because it appeared to be uninhabitable, with piles of garbage and refuse several feet high, including large amounts of human excrement. The children were afraid to come out of their hiding places and to speak with the police. Police had to repeatedly advise the children that they were there to help and they were safe. The children's bodies and clothing were covered in feces, and the girls had difficulty physically walking outside of the residence. In addition to the physical difficulty, they appeared to be and were immediately overstimulated upon leaving the residence. All 3 children were transported via ambulance to the hospital and showed signs of severe neglect. At the hospital, the children struggled with completing basic hygiene tasks like flushing a toilet and brushing their teeth because they had not done it in years. The children were forensically interviewed and described having virtually no physical contact with their mother, suspect Bryant, or the outside world in several years. The girls had not left the residence in several years, and her son had only left the home to go into the yard approximately 2 times, never venturing away from the house more than to check the mailbox. During his interview, her son stated that he would text their mother when their food supply was running low and she would have food delivered to the residence. The children shared that during the years they were concealed in the home, their suspect Bryant failed to provide toilet paper, soap, or shampoo. The defendant instructed the kids that they were not to answer the door or leave the house. All 3 children expressed fear about what their mother's response would be if they left the home. Defendant concealed the children from family and friends and lied about who was caring for the kids and their whereabouts. The defendant took the active steps of lying and concealing to make sure the children went undiscovered, and she took these actions knowing that her children would suffer serious physical and emotional harm as a result. Those are the statements made in the swear-to this morning. And again, these are allegations. I do want to point out and thank all the officers that were on scene that day. I've personally viewed the videos and images and was struck at what a difficult situation it was, but in the face of that difficulty, offered compassion to these kids. I also want to thank Detective John Brish and Lieutenant Sam Marsban for their dedication in working this case. And of course, the assistant prosecutors involved, Chief of Administration Betsy Haig, Chief of our SVU Sarah Green, APA Lauren Benninger, Chief of the Juvenile Division Kelly Collins, and APA Kanika Ferenczi for their diligent efforts in this case. At present, we've not been presented with a request for criminal charges against any other individuals. That does not mean that won't happen in the future. I just can't speak to it at this point. Morally, there is plenty of responsibility to go around for how this was allowed to happen. However, these 3 kids were entrusted to the care of their mother, Kelli Bryant, and the evidence suggests that she effectively abandoned them to a revolting pit of refuse and squalor. There must be consequences for those actions. The defendant is presently in custody. The 3 children in this case were interviewed at Care House, and I want to emphasize how important Care House is to this community. These kids were interviewed in a safe environment by an experienced, trained forensic interviewer, and these interviews are important in all child abuse cases. They allow each child the chance to tell us their story without the influence of the abuser and without using leading questions that could taint their testimony. I can't emphasize enough how important Care House is. If you suspect a child is abused or neglected, you too can report this to CPS. The hotline is 855-444-3911. And I urge anyone who suspects that a child is being abused or neglected to report that using that number. We need to make sure that every child is safe and well cared for. And before I take questions, I just want to remind you that these charges, again, are only allegations, and the defendant is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. Questions?
Not having been to the area, neighbors, anybody? I mean, I think what maybe people struggle with is how intimidated by their mother, yes, but how they could not even venture out of the home, or just nobody knowing that they were there. Or can you add context into, how that can happen?
I can only comment on what's been placed on the record. That's my ethical duty. But I will say that we see time and time again, victims of severe abuse of all ages make decisions that don't seem reasonable to us. And what we know is that that's very common. And there's a multitude of reasons why they didn't leave the home. We just don't know that yet. Yes.
Have prosecutors or deputies interviewed the fathers of the children?
They have. Yes.
Multiple fathers or one father?
I think it's already public record that of the 4 kids, there are 2 fathers.
Prosecutor McDonald.
Yes.
What stands out about this case to you? I mean, it's a pretty significant child abuse case.
That's a difficult question and a really good question. I said yesterday, and I've said this to the sheriff personally, we say a lot, this is the worst I've ever seen. And I've stopped saying that because every time I say that, I see something worse. It was unbelievable what they were living with for years. Unbelievable. It wouldn't be surroundings where you would want any living creature living in. Creature or animal, or particularly human beings. I mean, these kids, not to have even basic hygiene tools. And I guess what stands out the most for me is no love. There was nobody there to care for them for between 3 and 4 years. No parent, nobody physically present to let them know that they were safe and they were loved. Yes.
Did she have any prior contact with CPS or a prior criminal record?
I can't comment on that.
Is she being held on any outstanding charges, or is it just on this and then she'll be arraigned tomorrow?
We are not aware of any other holds or matters that she would be held under. At this moment, she's being held because of these pending charges. Now they're official, and she'll be arraigned, I believe, tomorrow.
Can you provide more context, appreciating what you said about, you mentioned that he would text his mother, one of the older boy. So he had access to a phone apparently, but.
All the children had access to the phones. They all had their own phones.
So would they see her? I've read an account that maybe she dropped some food off weekly, or can you talk about how they survived if they didn't leave the home, how often she came and where she was staying?
There was no, according to the evidence that's been placed on the record, there was no physical contact whatsoever. And I don't think it's accurate to say that they had food dropped off weekly. Sometimes, right. Sometimes it was longer than that.
But
and
she was the one distributing?
No, not all the time.
Okay.
Not all the time.
You had said the restroom was not, is that what you said? The restroom was not maybe properly functioning in there, but do we know if there was heat or air conditioning in the summer?
I don't have that. That has not been put on the record. But I do not believe that there was, I believe there was heat enough so that the children were at least able to live there. If not, as you know, given the cold temperatures, there would have been signs of freezing to death.
Where was she staying?
I don't have that information, not there.
And obviously you've charged her, so she thinks I'm assuming then obviously there's competence. So not that there's ever a reason for something of this horrific nature, but any inferences to the why that she just decided to abandon her kids beyond, some may think mental issues, but obviously not if you're charging her.
Right. Without commenting particularly on this case, as the prosecutor over the last over 4 years, you know, I've been asked, and I hear repeatedly that question on all of the terrible, violent, atrocious acts that we see, the why. And the answer is we don't know why. We can't get in the mind of somebody else. But we do know what the evidence shows, and we have the law. And nobody who is not found competent can stand trial. So I can't comment on that right now. But just to say that sometimes there isn't a why. Yes.
Is there any evidence to suggest that their substance abuse may have been involved in anything?
I can't comment on that.
Has mom been cooperative?
The defendant has an absolute right to remain silent. So any comment I would make on whether or not she's spoken to the police would be a violation of her rights.
Thank you.
Longer term, can you share what the plan is for the children? And some may wonder if family have taken them in now, how they didn't know. I'm not trying to assess blame by asking, but you know, where were they prior? How did they not know? You know,
right.
I mean, there are a lot of questions.
Good question. And the thing that I want to stress here is that we are responsible for prosecuting all of the criminal cases in this county. We're also responsible for representing the Department of Health and Human Services in child abuse and neglect proceedings. So we are simultaneously prosecuting the criminal case against mom and the neglect proceeding pertaining to the kids. So we will be asking our client, the Department of Health and Human Services, to file a petition to terminate her rights. So there's just a lot we can't really get into, except I do want to say that our client, the Department of Health and Human Services, their number one priority is the care and welfare of children. And wherever they are placed, they do their due diligence to make sure that is a safe placement. And all I can say is that those questions were asked and obviously satisfied. And the other thing I want to say is there's been such an outpouring in this community, but I would just stress that in the effort to take care of these kids, that we also protect their privacy. And Pontiac, if those of you who don't know, it's a small place and everybody knows everybody. And any outrage is totally understandable, but we want to do as much as we can to protect their placement so that they are protected.
But to be clear, they are not wards of the state. They are with family.
They are in the care and custody of the Department of Health and Human Services, and they are placed through DHHS with a relative placement. Yes, the custody remains with DHHS until otherwise determined by the court. And again, those are two different proceedings. Yes, that we are, there was a preliminary hearing yesterday, and we'll continue to provide information about that as that moves along.
Thank you.
So I can't believe that they have a relative watching the child. I mean, to me, and it's just my opinion, to me, they, although they're not directly responsible, but their lack of concern about the children and what all is going on with them in 3 years kind of contributed to the the continuance of this goddamn shit. That's crazy to me. And that's what I'm talking about. And they're gonna go over there and put the kids with a relative. Is it I don't care if it's the dad's side. The dad wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing there. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like, I understand because I'll sometimes go and hide out for, for amount of time or whatever. And then I have some friends, we're gonna put our eyes on you, we'll put our eyes on you, whatever. But that's until they got used to me doing that, right? But I'm also a grown, responsible person. And my child was always visible, right? In the paper or something, right? So there's that, right? And then she had birthdays, she had Christmas. Like, I just don't understand that nobody thought to say, well, how's the children? Well, let me see, take a picture of the kids. Oh my God, honey, I just don't know. Let me let the pack roll, honey.
Anything else? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Kids were living in a real-life nightmare.
The charges are 3 counts of child abuse in the first degree.
The Oakland County prosecutor charges a mother in what she says is the worst neglect case she has ever seen.
And this is the mother right here. She's 34-year-old Kelli Bryant, accused of abandoning her children for years.
And Bryant is expected to be arraigned in court tomorrow. Thanks for joining us at 5. I'm Ty Steele.
I'm Kimberly Gill. That comes after Oakland County prosecutor Karen McDonald revealed new information in the case. So let's get right out to Will Jones. He's live in Pontiac with more. Will.
Kimberly and Ty, Kelli Bryant, I should say, is facing the most serious charge for child abuse, first-degree child abuse. We can learn more about this case in court tomorrow for the arraignment, but investigators say the kids who lived at that house lived in fear of their mother. They had been cut off from the outside world for years.
We say a lot, this is the worst I've ever seen. And I've stopped saying that because every time I say that, I see something worse.
Kelli Bryant is facing child abuse charges, accused of leaving 3 of her kids to basically fend for themselves at a home in Pontiac.
Police were astonished to find anyone in the location because it appeared to be uninhabitable, with piles of garbage and refuse several feet high, including large amounts of human excrement.
At the home, police say they found a 15-year-old boy and 2 girls, ages 12 and 13.
At the hospital, the children struggled with completing basic hygiene tasks like flushing a toilet and brushing their teeth because they had not done it in years. The children were forensically interviewed and described having virtually no physical contact with their mother, suspect Bryant, or the outside world in several years.
Oakland County prosecutor Karen McDonald says Bryant moved out of the home around 2020 or 2021, leaving 3 children at the location. When the food supply ran low, McDonald says the son would text Bryant and food would be delivered. Police say they were called to the home on Valentine's Day for a welfare check because of missed rent payments.
Morally, there is plenty of responsibility to go around for how this was allowed to happen. However, these 3 kids were entrusted to the care of their mother, Kelli Bryant, and the evidence suggests that she effectively abandoned them to a revolting pit of refuse and squalor. There must be consequences for those actions.
McDonald says the 3 children are staying with family right now. Coming up at 6, we're going to learn more about what those kids experience inside this home and how they are doing tonight. We are live here in Pontiac. Will Jones, Local 4.
Okay, Will, thank you.
Yeah, literally. I mean, I found out about this on my way into work this afternoon, and there are no words. I mean, this is absolutely horrific. This is by far, I think, one of the worst stories we've ever covered here at Fox 2. And I want to warn everybody out there that the details are very disturbing.
If you think about the horrific ads you see on TV to spur donations for animals that have been abused or are living in terrible conditions, multiply that by 10.
A horrible story of abuse and abandonment. Investigators say 3 kids were living in a condo on Lydia Lane in Pontiac for years, alone in horrific conditions.
There was garbage trash piled 3 and 4 feet high, covered with feces all through the house. It doesn't look like the toilet or the bathtub had been usable or workable for quite some time, primarily because of the feces and trash. I don't think they had basic hygiene knowledge of what to do. They hadn't been given hygiene products for years, toothbrushes, etc.
A 15-year-old boy and 2 girls ages 12 and 13 in the house of horror since at least 2021, according to the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. Their mother or someone else would leave prepared food on the porch once a week.
They had basically been locked in the house without any kind of guidance or basic hygiene or any kind of education for years.
The kids were discovered Friday. The landlord called police and asked them to do a welfare check because he had not heard from the mother since December.
We went to the house to check on what was going on there and had no idea that there were kids there, let alone kids in grave situation.
Their 34-year-old mother arrested and being held at the Oakland County Jail. The children taken to an area hospital and are now in the care of a family member.
We showed up at the house. The young boy did have communication with the mom and said the police were there, and she said hide. When we took the kids out of the house, they had difficulty walking because their toenails were so long. They hadn't had any grooming. Incredibly disheveled and unkempt, hair very matted, filthy.
Authorities trying to figure out how this abuse went on for so long without anyone knowing about it.
It's pretty heartbreaking that the kids would have to live under those conditions. People just kind of get in their car and go. Another of my neighbors, we were just talking today, and she said to me, she said, look at all this snow. I don't see anybody out helping each other, shovel each other's snow. So I think people are just kind of just doing their own thing now and just kind of going in their places and closing the doors.
Still just so incredibly hard to believe that these kids were in this condo for so many years, never seeing the sunlight, never trying to leave. They were apparently spending their time watching TV and playing games, not in school. We know that they had been enrolled in Pontiac schools years ago, but what happened? Why did they fall through the cracks? And it just, I mean, it's mind-boggling that the girls that we talked about, ages 12 and 13, the sheriff says they were sleeping on pizza boxes, old pizza boxes. A lot more to come on this story, but just absolutely heartbreaking. Reporting live, Camille and Mary, Fox 2 News.
Yeah, heartbreaking doesn't even begin to describe it. It's deplorable, it's despicable, it's disgusting. And I think it's really poignant what this woman said at the end of your piece, that people maybe aren't paying attention. Did the sheriff address anything in that realm, that folks need to maybe think a little more about what's happening next door and speak up if they see anything suspicious, so something like this doesn't have to go on for so long?
Yeah, I talked to another neighbor and she'd only lived there since September. And she said she never heard anything, saw anything, smell anything. Those condos are so close together. But I think that, it makes us pause and just think how busy we all are in our own lives. But maybe we need to think, if we never see anyone coming and going, and maybe if we see, people did see that food being dropped off at that porch, that maybe we need to start asking more questions and start figuring out what's going on if something doesn't seem right. But I mean, why these kids were basically, they were locked in there for at least 4 years. I mean, like you said, this story is, it's hard to wrap your head around.
7 News Detroit starts right now with a breaking news alert.
We begin with that breaking news from Pontiac, where a mother accused of abandoning her 3 kids for nearly 5 years has pleaded not guilty. Thank you for joining us at noon. I'm Allie Hoxie. In the last half hour, Kelli Bryant pleaded not guilty to 3 counts of first-degree child abuse. As far as bond, the judge said that she finds Bryant to be, quote, a continued danger to the children, setting her bond at $250 million cash. If she does post that bond, she will be prohibited from contacting her children. Bryant is due back in court next month. Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonald says the children suffered unimaginable abuse, stating that the children were living in squalor. Yesterday, employees from the Oakland County Sheriff's Office wore hazmat suits to clean out the house. This case has left so many people in disbelief.
Everybody's upset about it. Like, oh my God, this is right in our neighborhood. How could something like this happen?
Now, that is a question that we have heard from so many people over the last few days. 7 News Detroit reporter Kiera Hay is in Pontiac breaking down the details of this case and what comes next.
You know, this is one of those stories that's going to stick with me for a really long time. In my head, I keep replaying the Oakland County Sheriff Michael Bouchard saying that the 15-year-old boy had to escape the home because he wanted to feel the grass. His mother telling him and his 2 other sisters that they could never leave the home and never answer the door. Well, now we're learning that the mother is the one who could have her freedom stripped away for the rest of her life. Kelli Marie Bryant is now charged with 3 counts of first-degree child abuse for allegedly abandoning her 3 children, aged 15, 13, and 12, for nearly 5 years. With no running water in the home, piles of trash, feces, and mold were present wall to wall, with officials wearing hazmat suits to clean it out. Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonald saying the children struggled to brush their teeth and flush the toilet at the hospital because they hadn't done it in so long. Well, now we're learning how Bryant will plead to the charges brought against her, but McDonald warns more people could be next.
Morally, there is plenty of responsibility to go around for how this was allowed to happen. However, these 3 kids were entrusted to the care of their mother, Kelli Bryant, and the evidence suggests that she effectively abandoned them to a revolting pit of refuse and squalor.
Now, this is just the first court trial and many to come in this horrifying story. Of course, 7 News Detroit will continue to follow it all the way through. In Pontiac, I'm Kiera Hay, 7 News Detroit.
You know, right now we're learning new information about the heartbreaking story of 3 kids abandoned by their mother, living alone in a Pontiac home for years.
Heartbreaking. In fact, deputies believe 3 children ages 12, 13, and 15 were locked in their home since 2020 or 2021. They were discovered living in filthy conditions February 14th. Their 34-year-old mother arrested that same day. Now criminal charges against the mother are expected anytime now.
Well, now the sheriff is shedding new light on exactly how long the children were abandoned, gaps in the school code that enabled this, and money now being raised to help them.
7 News Detroit reporter Sarah Michaels joining us with all of that information from Pontiac.
This story continues to grow more and more disturbing. We now know that these 3 kids, ages 12, 13, and 15, were living alone, abandoned in this Pontiac home for nearly 5 years.
You wouldn't do this to an animal, let alone your child.
Oakland County Sheriff Michael Bouchard shedding light as to how it is possible that 3 kids lived abandoned in this home filled with mold, trash, and feces for nearly 5 years.
2020, the mother dropped off some trash bags, gloves, and Febreze, and that was about the last thing related to hygiene.
These pictures a window into the horrors that 2 sisters, ages 12 and 13 years old, lived in with their 15-year-old brother. According to the sheriff, they were abandoned at the home somewhere between the spring and the summer of 2020.
Only one of the 3 that ever came out was the young boy, and he came out twice. Once because he wanted to feel the grass, which by itself is heartbreaking, and a second time to check the mail.
They survived off food that their mother would drop off or have delivered.
Towards the end, the children apparently were getting a loaf of bread dropped off that was intended to last 3 to 4 days.
We're told that the children were found during a wellness check for their mother Friday. They were upstairs, filthy, hunched over, hair matted, and whimpering. The mother is now in jail while the 3 children are staying with their grandfather. Their father was incarcerated for a time and had sought to reunite with his kids.
Consent agreement was arrived at in 2022, but the mother still would not allow him to see the kids. All of us are asking, how the heck did this happen? How did we lose 3 kids?
Bouchard says that while investigating, detectives found gaps in the school code that allowed these kids to be unaccounted for years. To protect future children, they are now looking to change state law and make it so that before a child is unenrolled from a school, the school needs to receive written confirmation of enrollment from the receiving school.
Our detectives saw them at their interview at Care House. They were already making amazing progress, having had some tender love, having had some supportive care, having been put in new clothing and some basic hygiene.
The healing for these children has just begun after being left abandoned for years. The entire community is now looking out for them. The sheriff says that the clothing donations have been overwhelming, and they have now published this link to raise funds for the siblings' futures.
Law firm that would set up a trust fund so that we can take 100% of what we receive in donations for these kids and put it in a trust that can be administered, that can take care of maybe their medical bills, mental health visits.
We've put the link for where you can donate to help these kids with this story on WXYZ.com. In Pontiac, Sarah Michaels, 7 News Detroit.
And this is why we put a bunch of these together in a pack so you get some information. I don't know if it was shared in the other videos that we watched, but so the kids are at the grandfather. What was he the whole 3 years? And then how the school, like, I don't know how old the younger ones are, but I know from time to time they send stuff home and you have to send it back, or if the children, and definitely if the children missing, they call your house or send people to your house or something. They have to have some system. That's why I be saying I don't know how can people drop out of school. Because, baby, back in the day, they had an accountability system for the teachers and the parents and administrators, for every goddamn body, even for that county. Because the county have to, they count these students and stuff. This is crazy to me. Let's see what else we can dig up.
Thank you.
Well, the pictures are hard to look at. Police in Pontiac say 3 children were found living alone in deplorable conditions after discovering their mother had abandoned them for years. Our Victor Williams is following the story for us tonight. Victor, we're learning that mother has been arrested. What else can you tell us?
Yeah, that's right. The mother has been arrested, Pam, but we're told that these kids were actually inside of this house for years, at least since 2021. This is the house behind me that has that orange sticker right there on the window. But we're told these kids were only 12, 13, and 15. Now, authorities, they said that the mom would drop off food from time to time, but she's a 34-year-old woman that's now being held at the Oakland County Jail, with a case now being turned over to the prosecutor for review. We are expecting charges to come in the next few days or so, but the only reason authorities ever stepped in the first place was because the landlord actually called 911. He contacted deputies after not hearing from the mother since about December, and that's what started this welfare check. Take a look at some of this video from inside of the place. We're told that the house was just so unsanitary that evidence techs, they had to wear hazmat suits in order to investigate. Now, we're talking about piles of garbage in rooms as high as 4 feet tall, human feces overflowing in the toilet, and then also the bathtubs. Apparently, they were living on that food that people would bring nearby. Even also, strangers would sometimes bring that food up to the door. Now, also, we are being told that the mother had not spoken to the 2 girls that were in there for years, but she would go and actually speak to the son from time to time. The kids were not in school. They actually spent their entire time at the home watching TV and then playing video games. The conditions in the house were so bad that the kids had to sleep on the floor. The boy had a mattress, and the girls had to sleep on pizza boxes. So we're actually going to go and hear from Sheriff Michael Bouchard on what these kids are now having to go through, as well as what they now have to bounce back from.
our first focus is in trying to make sure these kids get what they need to begin the process of moving forward. The second very important part of this is, how did 3 kids fall through the cracks so terribly? How did the community, relatives, the schools, no one knew to reach out to us? How did that happen? And so that's going to be a big part of what I've already directed our investigations to figure out.
Now, while all of this was going on inside of the house, we're told that they ended up finding the mother at a different location. And so we're going to have more on what residents living nearby they have to say about this. That's coming up at 11 p.m. Victor Williams.
Okay, because next is coming up, is the bond hearing or what have you. And oh my gosh, they didn't have it those photos blurred out like the other ones did. I almost goddamn got sick back here. I see that. That's why I like Al Jazeera, because they show it all, baby. They was on their Al Jazeera. They showed everything. I mean, I was getting kind of sick. Like, damn. Did y'all see that? And the kids sleeping on pizza boxes. What the fuck? That bitch need her ass kicked. She need her ass kicked. She really do.
Local 4.
Hard to imagine. Thank you, Victor.
Your Honor, and I did discuss it with my client.
Okay, all right.
I am, yes.
Okay, and have you read and reviewed that?
I did do that in the breakout room, Your Honor. Sorry, there's a lot of feedback, I think, from the jail screen. I think that's our problem right now.
Yeah, our problem is
But yes,
from the
I
jail
did review
screen.
it and I talked to her.
Okay, all right. So they're recommending release with conditions in this matter. So we're going to go from there. We have the PCC date. I'm going to have you speak to bond, and then I'll make my decision as to bond. And I'll also have prosecution speak to bond. Ms. Carragongo, you're asking the court to accept the recommendation as provided by pretrial services.
I am, Your Honor. MCR 6.106, if you go through those conditions, provide that a personal recognizance bond with any conditions should be provided unless Ms. Bryant fell under some of the very specified exceptions to a personal bond that are listed. The court can also provide a cash bond if the court finds that Ms. Bryant is either a risk to the community or a flight risk. This particular case is serious, and we're not denying that it's a very serious case. However, I don't believe that the facts and circumstances of the case give any indication that Ms. Bryant is a risk to the community at large. In addition to that, there is no indication that Ms. Bryant is a flight risk. She's a lifelong resident of the county. She was residing within the city limits of this community. She, was employed and she has ties to the community. In speaking to her, she also is asking that the court consider a tether, which could be part of a bond if the people had any concerns that she posed a flight risk. I do think, the recommendation from pretrial services is in line with the Michigan court rules, understanding that it is a very serious offense, but the court rules are what they are. And they do provide that Ms. Bryant should be released on a personal bond with conditions. So that's what I'm asking the court to do.
Ms. Green, would you like to address the court regarding bond in this matter?
Thank you, Your Honor. I did have the opportunity to look at the pretrial services report. I know, Your Honor, just square two facts yesterday and that those are fresh in your memory.
Please. I'm going to mute the jail. I'm going to mute the jail camera. And go ahead, Ms. Green.
Thank you. I did have the opportunity to review the pretrial services report. I know that Your Honor just listened to the swear to facts yesterday, and I'm sure that those are fresh in your memory. I am requesting in this case, I do agree with Ms. Carragongo regarding MCR 6.106 to the extent that you may not deny bond, but this court has the authority to put in place a high cash bond with conditions. And I believe that it appears that Ms. Bryant is not employed and that her resident status may be transient. So I consider her, and I think that the facts of this case portray her as a potential flight risk, and that there are 3 victims in this case that she should absolutely be prohibited from having contact with. So I'd ask that the court add a specific no contact provision as it relates to the 3 minor victims in this case. And if the court would like me to go on, I can.
No, what I found very suspicious in the report for pretrial services, there's 2 different addresses given to her. So I agree with you, Ms. Green, that one could opine that she's transient. She's from here, she's from there. We don't know where she resides. I do find her an acute risk and danger to the community and to any minor children under the age of 18, let alone the 3 minor children that she is a mother to. With that in mind, I agree with Ms. Carragamo. I cannot deny her bond. That is court, of course. My first knee-jerk reaction was to deny her bond. However, because I find her acute danger, I find her a continued danger to the children. My main concern is, I don't know who, if anyone, that the children have been given to. If it is a family member, I'm concerned that she still may have contact with the family member from the jail with instructions to continue to engage in the fear tactics to forbid the children from cooperating with authorities in their continued investigation in this matter. For that reason alone, I'm giving her a $250 million bond in this matter, cash only. The other aspects, should she post said bond, she is not to have any contact with these children by family members, third-party agents, or friends. So, Ms. Bryant, I want you to understand, any phone calls from the jail, should you're unable to post this bond, is recorded. Should the court find out that you are sending messages to engage in further fear tactics and intimidation of the children, your phone privileges will be removed. You're not to have, in fact, any contact should you post this bond with any children under the age of 18 in this matter. If you post this bond, you should be supervised by pretrial services, no alcohol or drugs, no weapons or firearms, and a GPS tether with a verified address, because I'm concerned pretrial services has indicated 2 different reported addresses for you. I don't believe anyone knows where you have been staying, madam. There's no consistent history. Anything further regarding the bond, Ms. Carragamo, Ms. Green?
Your Honor, just ever so briefly, they had no issues finding my client to arrest her. So I just want the record to be clear on that.
Ms. Green?
Your Honor, you have before you information that the defendant has been lying about her whereabouts, the whereabouts regarding what she was telling where the children were. So you have a lot on this record in terms of inconsistencies with her location and the information that she's given to put in place this high cash bond.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your cooperation in this matter. Ms. Bryant, you are thanked and excused from the camera.
We all knew she was a bad parent, but I don't think nobody really realized this was going on.
Charlene Bryant is the former sister-in-law to 34-year-old Kelli Bryant, now facing child abuse charges after investigators say they found 3 of her kids living alone in squalor for several years at this Pontiac townhouse on Lydia Lane. Charlene has not been in contact in years and has loads of questions now.
I just don't know how the family don't know when they were so close.
Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonald charged Kelli Bryant with 3 counts of child abuse in the first degree, which could mean life in prison if convicted. All of this after police say they found 3 of Bryant's 4 kids, a 15-year-old boy and his 2 sisters, ages 12 and 13, living in horrific conditions.
Her daughters were hiding in a bathroom that was filled with feces, piles of trash, and completely non-functional, while her son was hiding in another room. Police were astonished to find anyone in the location because it appeared to be uninhabitable, with piles of
garbage and refuse several feet high, including large amounts of human excrement.
The prosecutor says Bryant lived at the home with all 4 kids back in 2019, but later moved out, leaving 3 of her children abandoned while one of the kids went to live with their dad. Detectives say the landlord called police to the home, worried for Bryant's welfare after not getting a rent payment since last October. That's when the kids were found, shaken, scared, and covered in feces, according to the prosecutor.
Honestly, I thought the grandmother was taking care of the children.
That's the last you heard?
Yeah, that's the last. You went 4 or 5 years without seeing your grandchildren. There was no questions.
We stopped by the Pontiac home of Bryant's extended family, where the police eventually took the kids. We wanted to talk to the adults. Hi, how are you? Is there anything you'd like to say, sir? No comment given there. We also searched Bryant's Facebook page, which was easy to find and not set to private. Her content shows her modeling various outfits for the camera.
She's gonna claim she couldn't afford to take care of her kids, but you got your hair done, you got your nails done, you got new clothes on all your pictures. Come on now.
What do you think should happen at this point?
She needs to go to prison and never see her kids again. Them kids need to go to someone that's gonna take care of them.
Thank you all for coming this morning.
We all knew she was a bad.
That's crazy, yo. That is crazy. That's crazy. That lady right there asking the same thing. Yeah, Keisha. That lady asking the same thing. 3 years? You could nobody? That's what I'm saying. I don't like the way that whoever shut that door and that reporters. I'm done with that whole family. I'm sorry. Like, come on. I have friends that be on my ass, like when it was one time I was going 7 days a week, right? So when I take a break, I take a break. Then you factor in all the more ridiculous relationships and all that crazy shit. Hell, I have to take a break. All them crazy jobs, right? But they'll still be like, nope. They ain't taking no for an answer. And this helper, in that bond hearing, shaking her head, acting as if she ain't been lying. You girl, bye. Girl, bye. Oh, unfit helper. So the next case happened, I guess, a couple weeks ago. Another unfit fool, but this one went ahead and allegedly killed her kids. Like, what is going on? Yeah, so the package doesn't ain't that long. That is crazy. It's crazy.
Thank you all for coming this morning.
Queen, you had already heard about this case
many, many times and
this
talked
one.
about how horrific, tragic, and shocking certain cases are. Each time thinking there are some future alleged facts that could be worse than what I'm talking about at the time. Knowing all the while, though, that there's always a worse set of facts on the horizon. Well, that day has come again. So I want to talk about a case of a young boy named Zamar King III. The alleged facts in this case are that we are announcing today. On January 6th of 2025, the Detroit Police Department was notified and summoned to a house on Whittingham in Detroit. They had been contacted by the landlord that owned that house. When he went to that house, the landlord contacted him when he went to that house to prepare it for a new tenant. That he called the police because he found a shallow grave in the backyard of the home on Whittingham. Upon arrival, the police were shown that grave where a human foot was sticking out of the ground. The foot was believed to be belonged to a small child. After an extensive investigation by quite a few agencies, and the chief will talk about that in a minute, the buried body was discovered to be 9-year-old Zamar King III. That the mother of young Zamar was 41-year-old Brandee Pierce. It's alleged that she killed him, and that the cause of death found by the medical examiner was smothering and neck compression. So I want to just further go ahead and tell you what other facts about this case. It's alleged that she purchased a shovel. She bound him by tying his hands and feet together and dug a hole in the background of the house on Whittingham, where she had been living for a short time. She then put him in this hole and covered him with dirt. That after killing her son, she and her other son, who was 3 years old, moved to Georgia, Cobb County to be exact. It was determined that this, in fact, happened sometime in October of 2024. That Zamar's mother, Brandee Pierce, is currently in Cobb County, Georgia, and we will be requesting her to be extradited back to Michigan. We are charging Brandee Catrice Pierce today with 1 count of murder in the first degree premeditation, which carries a life without parole sentence, mandatory. Count 2 is homicide felony murder. Again, the mandatory penalty is life in prison without the possibility of parole. Our 3rd count is child abuse in the first degree, life or any term of years in prison. The first degree child abuse is the felony to make out the felony murder we are alleging. Count 4 is tampering with evidence, criminal case punishable by more than 10 years in prison. And the 5th one is interfering with concealing and interfering with the death of the individual, 5 years, of course, that being 9-year-old Zamar King. As always, this defendant is presumed innocent unless or until proven guilty. I should tell you that Judge Aaliyah Sabri of the 36th District Court authorized these charges yesterday. And since we will be requesting extradition, we will notify you all when in fact she is back in the state of Michigan. So of course, there's no next day for court. Again, let me just repeat. These charges and allegations are quite serious. They're deadly, they're shocking, every platitude that you can think of. But again, Ms. Pierce is still presumed to be innocent unless or until proven guilty. So I'm gonna have the chief say a couple words to you, and then we'll answer some questions for you if you can.
Thank you, Madam Prosecutor. As Madam Prosecutor said, this case is rather shocking. In my 27-year career, I don't remember seeing anything like this, but I just want to thank, of course, Madam Prosecutor. I want to thank our law enforcement partners and everyone who helped out with this. The FBI was instrumental. Michigan State Police was instrumental in helping out as well, along with Cobb County and DeKalb County in the state of Georgia, their district attorney's office. And I just really want to express how proud I am of the hardworking men and women of the Detroit Police Department who helped bring this case to where it is today with these charges. I want to thank, of course, of our Major Crimes Division, the Commander Rebecca McKay, Captain Marcus Thurkill, Sergeant Ashley Peterson, Detective Kelli Lucy, who is here with us, Detective Lisa Johnson, and then the officer who is leading the case, Officer Isaac Yamas, and the members of the Western Squad. The Detroit Police Department works relentlessly on behalf of victims, and we are confident that there will be accountability for this. And as Madam Prosecutor said, of course, everyone is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Thank you much.
It seems to all of us who do this work on a daily basis, there's been just a large number of tragic cases that have happened to our children, worse than we have seen. So It's our hope that we don't continue to see these, but I know that's probably false hope that I'm having. Before we go any further, I want to introduce Tina Ripley, who has worked together on this case very hard. She will be trying this case. Louisa Papoulis is to her right and your left. She is the Deputy Chief of the Special Victims Unit. Kelli Gleason is to my immediate left, and she is the Chief of the Special Victims Unit. And again, if the Chief would introduce his people that are standing here, that would be helpful.
Sergeant, I'm sorry, Detective Lisa Johnson is right here. Also, officer in charge of the case, Isaac Yamas. Kelly Lucy, detective, Ashley Peterson, Marcus Thurkill. Marcus is in the back there as well. And then Captain Rebecca McKay.
Okay. We'll take some short questions at this point, if you have any.
Not that you guys needed it to get a charging decision, but any indication as to why, a possible motive in this case?
You know, I don't talk about motives at the time. Any further evidence and charging decision will come out when we go to court. So, again, we can't comment on that at this time.
Has there been any communication with Samar's mother at all from you guys?
We did speak with his father yesterday, actually this morning, actually. So, yes, we have had contact with the family, and the Detroit Police Department has had contact with the family as well.
So forgive me, I must be confused because I'm not listening close enough, so I apologize. But the relationship of the suspect to the child?
Mother. Okay. Yes. 41-year-old Brandee Pierce was his mother.
Okay. And did Samar's father live in Michigan?
He lives in this area, yes.
And was he aware of his child's death?
Again, we talked to him. I don't think he was aware until recently, but again, we did speak with him this morning. And we'll be speaking with him, of course, further as time goes on.
And those are just, oh, go ahead.
No, please, you got it.
Those are her two kids, Zamar and the 3-year-old?
Yes.
Madam Prosecutor, where's the 3-year-old right now? What's his status? What's his condition?
Again, he's with his mother in Georgia right now. And he was, and now he's in foster care here, I believe.
Can you
foster care locally? Oh, okay.
Yep.
Are you able to provide any further information on the timeline of, you mentioned October, and then what?
That'll come out in court.
But in regard to how she ends up in Georgia with the other child, or
all I can tell you at this point in time is she left shortly after she buried the body in the backyard and went to the state of Georgia.
So the landlord call to DPD was on January 6th, correct?
The landlord call was on January 6th. The police were notified. They immediately went out to the house on Whittingham. They were shown that grave by the owner of that particular property. They saw the foot sticking out of the ground, and it went from there. The chief notified me immediately upon that discovery.
She had rented that home?
I assume she rented it. I don't know.
Madam Prosecutor, this got this from a co-worker, some indication that
who's talking? I can't see it.
Randy.
Oh, okay. All right.
Can you speak to this? I'll just read this verbatim. The source indicated yesterday that the mother claims they were horsing around and playing some sort of choking game.
I'm not going to comment on the evidence in the case.
Also, was this case file sent over to you guys more than once at all? And if so, what elements were needed to get to a charging decision?
Oh, we're not going to talk about that. Yeah. The police contact us when they have information. We talk often back and forth. And then once we get a completed investigation, we make a charging decision. Anybody else?
Do you know how long the mom has been living at that rental house?
For a short period of time. It's a very short period of time. Thank you, everybody. Oh, do you have something else?
Well, I think I know the answer to your question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. In regard to my question is, do you potentially this was accidental? Somebody panics and then leaves the state. Intentional? Are you able to offer anything in regard to intent or non-intent?
I am not going to do that. You'll find out in court.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Did officials with Children's Protective Services miss blaring warnings that could have saved the life of a 9-year-old Detroit boy?
His remains were found buried in a backyard at a home in January.
The boy's mother was charged with his murder on February 5th.
7 investigator Ross Jones is revealing internal CPS records, raising serious questions about what officials did and did not do when they heard alarming claims about the child's safety.
We identified some human remains, someone small in stature. Extremely sad day.
The scene at Woodingham and St. Martin's in Detroit was enough to shake even career police officers. The body of a child found buried in a shallow grave.
This case is rather shocking. In my 27-year career, I don't remember seeing anything like this.
It took days for officers to determine that the boy was 9-year-old Zamar King, murdered, prosecutors say, by his mother, Brandee Pierce.
It's alleged that she purchased a shovel. She bound him by tying his hands and feet together. She then put him in this hole and covered him with dirt.
But as unspeakable as the alleged crime was, it did not come out of nowhere.
It's just a train wreck that's going to happen, right? You just see it coming, and they don't do anything about it.
By law, records from Children's Protective Services are guarded closely, even after a child dies. But we've obtained internal CPS records that show state employees were warned for years that Zamar was in danger. At least 4 times, records show, Brandee Pierce was the subject of CPS complaints, the first coming in 2015, after Pierce admitted to marijuana and alcohol use during her first trimester. It happened, she said, before she decided to keep Zamar. There were complaints in 2019 and 2021, both alleging that Zamar had been left alone. The first time in the lobby of a Southfield apartment building, with Zamar telling police he did not know where he belonged. Police later made contact with a relative, and the complaint was denied. 2 years later, on a 78-degree day in May, Zamar was left alone in his mother's locked car for more than 90 minutes while she went to a doctor's appointment. She told police her son was a heavy sleeper and claimed doctors wouldn't let him into her appointment.
It's the pattern, right? Here is a mom, again, where she's repeatedly reported by different people in the community.
Frank Vandervoort is a law professor at the University of Michigan and a longtime child welfare advocate who said Pierce's pattern of behavior and the disclosure that she was receiving mental health services on an almost daily basis should have been a red flag to CPS.
That suggests to me a very severe level of mental health need. So I'm troubled by that, and it raises more questions than it answers for us.
The Macomb County prosecutor denied a warrant request for child abuse, saying there was insufficient evidence and CPS working with mom. CPS would close the case after performing a home visit, finding no safety hazards, enough food, and suitable sleeping arrangements. Then, last April, came the 4th complaint to CPS. This time, Pierce would come here to this Plymouth Hospital emergency room, reporting she was anxious and depressed. Pierce told CPS she had a breakdown and felt herself going into a panic attack. She was questioning whether she should give up custody of one of her children. She'd been evicted from a motel, she said. Her car was repossessed. She was completely out of funds. Once she left the hospital, she and her kids would be sleeping on the street.
On its own, how serious is that?
Critical. This is a family with no place to live. She tells the caseworker, I can't sleep in my car, which suggests to me that she's been sleeping in her car at some points.
But what Zamar told CPS was most alarming of all. He had not been to school in over a year, he said, and doesn't always have food to eat. He said his mother beat him with a belt, that she's choked him with her hands, and that she wants to kill him.
Any rational, normal person walking out on the street hearing this would be completely alarmed by what they're hearing. They would take action. They would call the police.
But what CPS did, according to internal records, was close the case. The investigation found no preponderance of evidence of physical neglect. Pierce was provided with pamphlets connecting her with community services, and a note was added to follow up on her mental health appointments. 6 months later, after Zamar reported that his mother choked and wanted to kill him, prosecutors say she did.
It's alleged that she killed him and that the cause of death found by the medical examiner was smothering and neck compression.
CPS records show that the family was placed at a homeless shelter after that final complaint last April. It is not clear how long they were there. Then in December, Brandee Pierce was found in Georgia. She was arrested after someone reported finding her other child, a 3-year-old, locked in a car alone. Police said temperatures were in the 40s, the child was nude, and there was feces and a deflated air mattress in the vehicle. Citing state and federal law, CPS said they could not comment on this case, but they are heartbroken by Zamar's death and are committed to ensuring the health and safety of all children. Tonight, Zamar's relatives are trying to pay for his burial. They have started a GoFundMe, and we have included a link where you can donate on our website right now at wxyz.com. Beyond horrific. And we asked CPS, is the employee who handled that last investigation, what is their status? Are they working today? Are they under investigation? Were they disciplined? They said they couldn't comment, but there are many, many questions that need to be asked about this.
I mean, it leaves you speechless, and my stomach is just turning over. Where is that mom? She's locked up right now, or she's getting help?
It is unclear whether or not she's still in Georgia. They have to move her to Michigan so she can be arraigned. Her whereabouts right now are not entirely clear, but she is under arrest.
And her other children are safe, as far as we know.
State custody right now.
So many missed red flags. All right, Ross, thank you so much for that report.
A tragic loss and heartbreaking discovery.
That is insane. That's insane. That is what I was talking about before I saw this video, before I started this live. That was what I was talking about a while ago. How they don't do shit. Here's another kid was out a year. Kid reported abuse, and they gave him goddamn pamphlets and tell the mother to follow up. That's crazy. Let me tell you. I don't know if they still do this, right? Maybe they do and maybe they don't. But within those agencies, or sometimes maybe not on site, but you contract someone to do it, they run like little what is it called? Like, not quality control. Oh my gosh. Where they like test the system, right? Like do it like in a mock type of way, where they'll, report some instance of abuse and whatever, and see how the system responds and stuff like that. I don't know if they have those type of quality controls or whatever in these goddamn systems now. That's crazy. Like, what are they doing? And while and don't get me wrong, while the social workers need a lot of resources to enable them to do their jobs, whatever, one of them is constant training. And stop always trying to keep the kids in some old fucked up situation. Now the mother, I don't know how she'll be handled, because I don't know if she'll be found incompetent enough not to be able to stand trial or whatever. I don't know. But one thing about the law, they keep it out. You might not be competent enough to stand trial now, but maybe goddamn later. This is ridiculous.
As we learn more tonight about a Detroit mother charged with killing her 9-year-old son.
And tonight, police say the arrest made months ago may have saved the life of a 3-year-old child. This is the mugshot for 41-year-old Brandee Pierce. She faces murder and child abuse charges in Detroit. accused of smothering her 9-year-old son, Zamar, and burying him in the backyard.
New arrest warrants show police arrested Pierce in Brookhaven back in December for child cruelty against her 3-year-old. Police say Pierce told them they were homeless and living out of a rental car at the time. 11 Alive's Angelina Salcido is live now from the Cobb County Jail, where Pierce is behind bars until she can be extradited back to Detroit. Angelina, police say that arrest in December likely saved her youngest child's life.
Well, police immediately contacted other authorities back when this arrest happened, as this child, this 3-year-old Zor, was being checked out at a hospital in Metro Atlanta. Now, back then, Pierce told police that she had come to Metro Atlanta for a fresh start with her 3-year-old. This just months after prosecutors in Detroit say she killed her 9-year-old son and buried him. October 2024.
The cause of death found by the medical examiner was smothering and neck compression.
A gruesome death.
It's alleged that she purchased a shovel. She bound him by tying his hands and feet together and dug a hole in the background of the house on Whittingham, where she had been living for a short time.
Detroit prosecutors say 41-year-old Brandee Pierce killed her 9-year-old son, Zamar. His remains not found until January 6th this year, buried behind a garage at the rental home where she lived with him and 3-year-old Zor. Neighbors shocked to learn what happened there.
It's sad, though. It's really sad that that happened.
Sources say the landlord found the home empty 2 days before Thanksgiving. Pierce left to Georgia with her 3-year-old, but was arrested in Brookhaven at a Dollar General for cruelty to children. Officers found Zor in the front seat, naked. Documents show both front seats were pulled forward, a small deflated air mattress placed in the middle. Pierce was arrested again by Cobb County deputies on January 10th for possession of a controlled substance and theft. Back in Detroit,
we are charging Brandee Catrice Pierce today with 1 count of murder in the first degree premeditation. Count 2 is homicide felony murder.
Pierce is being held here at the Cobb County Jail on a $15,000 bond. Officials in Michigan are working on getting her extradited back there so she can face those charges related to the death of her 9-year-old son. We're live tonight in Cobb County. Angelina Salcido, 11 Alive News.
Angelina, thank you.
A shocking and disturbing case out of Wayne County. The remains of a boy were found buried in his backyard, and now his mother has been charged in connection to his death. CBS News Detroit's Terrell Bailey has been following this case, but we do want to warn you, some of the details may be difficult to hear.
What was happening behind closed doors is something neighbors in this area are wondering. It's after a mother is charged in the murder of her own son.
If you don't want the child, don't have a child, or give a child to people who wants children. But to hurt a child, you sad. You are real sad.
The news of a child being killed by his mother has many reacting. It all started as a landlord prepared this home on Whittingham Drive for new tenants. That's when they found a foot sticking out of the ground.
The police were notified. They immediately went out to the house on Whittingham. They were shown that grave by the owner of that particular property.
Prosecutors identified the remains as 9-year-old Zamar King, the person allegedly responsible. King's mother, 41-year-old Brandee Catrice Pierce.
She never really came out. Those kids never came out. I have seen her come out with that 3-year-old, the youngest child, but I've never seen this older child ever.
Pierce reportedly took off to Georgia in November with her other child, a 3-year-old boy. We've learned she ended up having a run-in with police near Atlanta after someone spotted the toddler alone in the car with no clothes on. All the while, Brookhaven police say Pierce was attempting to sell plasma nearby.
Very rarely you even saw her.
Neighbors back here in Detroit say the family only lived in the home for several weeks before leaving. They say they never saw Zamar outside. It's unclear what school the child attended, but sources say he wasn't enrolled in Detroit public schools.
Whether it be a woman, a man, whatever, we are the ones to protect our children first.
Prosecutors say Zamar's father has since been notified. It's believed the child had been buried since October.
She bound him by tying his hands and feet together and dug a hole in the background of the house on Whittingham.
Now, Pierce is set to be extradited back to Michigan, while we've also learned her second child is with Child Protective Services. In Wayne County, Terrell Bailey, CBS News, Detroit.
We're learning more about a mother accused of killing her child and hiding here in Metro Atlanta. Brandee Pierce is facing charges from Detroit, Michigan to Atlanta.
Yeah, Fox 5's Kevin Stewart is live at the Cobb County Jail with the local twist. Kevin?
Yeah, Pierce is still here at the Cobb County Jail awaiting extradition, but her legal troubles in Metro Atlanta actually begin in DeKalb County. Back on December 20th, someone told a security officer who then told Brookhaven police a little boy was alone in a locked SUV in Northeast Plaza.
He was completely nude.
A 3-year-old with feces in the back seat.
The vehicle was not running. That particular day, the temperatures were in the mid to low 40s.
Police say the child's mother, Brandee Pierce, eventually walked out of a plasma donation center.
There appeared to be an air mattress inside of the car, and the mother did claim that she was in between homes, had just moved from out of state and was trying to get back up on her feet.
But according to authorities in Detroit, Pierce came here in November to avoid justice.
They saw the foot sticking out of the ground, and it went from there.
That January discovery in Detroit was the beginning of the unraveling of the murder of 9-year-old Zamar King, killed in October. This is Brandee Pierce's other son, found dead in this shallow grave in a backyard in the house Pierce rented.
The cause of death found by the medical examiner was smothering and neck compression.
Authorities in Michigan have charged Pierce with murder, child abuse, and concealing a death. Her other child is still here in DFAC's custody. After bonding out of DeKalb County Jail on child cruelty charges, Cobb County arrested her at Cumberland Mall on possession of a controlled substance and theft by deception charges.
We have been in contact with the agencies that are in Detroit, so we've been working with them this week to try and get them all the information that we have.
Now, that theft by deception charge is actually tied to the SUV she was found in. Allegedly, she rented that vehicle and didn't return it. Reporting live in Cobb County, Kevin Stewart, Fox 5 News.
All right, Kevin, thanks so much.
Police and prosecutors say they've solved the mystery. You might remember it was just a few weeks ago when police found human remains at this home on Detroit's west side.
And now they believe that those remains are those of a 9-year-old boy and his mother. This woman right here, 41-year-old Brandee Pierce, is charged with his murder. Let's get out to Sean Lay. He's live in that neighborhood tonight. And Sean, Prosecutor Worthy is calling this case the most callous she's ever seen.
Truly. So we want to get to the details of this horrible case first and then listen closely to the reaction we are getting from people who know this mom.
I have stood at this podium many, many times and talked about how horrific, tragic, and shocking certain cases are. Each time thinking there are some future alleged facts that could be worse than what I'm talking about at the time. Knowing all the while, though, that there's always a worse set of facts on the horizon.
And those set of facts are sickening. Another child murdered, 9-year-old Zamar King, allegedly at the hands of his mother, 41-year-old Brandee Pierce. Sources telling me Pierce put her little boy into a chokehold, killed him, and buried his body back in October. It was on January 6th, a child's foot was seen sticking out of the ground on the side of this home on Woodingham. Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy with more.
It's alleged that she purchased a shovel. She bound him by tying his hands and feet together and dug a hole in the background of the house on Woodingham, where she had been living for a short time. She then put him in this hole and covered him with dirt.
Once Zamar's remains were identified, his mother was found being held in Cobb County, Georgia, on drug and theft charges.
This case is rather shocking. In my 27-year career, I don't remember seeing anything like this.
That shallow grave is still there. People who knew the mother walked up to see that grave with me.
That's awful. That really breaks my heart because I got a 9-year-old at home and I can't imagine a baby being in that hole.
I've got 8.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. In fact, we've backed off of that house in that area on the west side. The grave is still open there. It is just too disturbing to be near and look at. That's what people are telling us there tonight. More reaction from this at 6 o'clock, guys. But as far as Pierce goes, the mom, she's in Georgia. She'll be brought back here to face those murder charges and child abuse charges. She has a 3-year-old who is safe in foster care tonight. We're live downtown tonight. Sean Lay, Local 4.
So difficult to wrap our minds around those details. Sean, thanks.
You think someone was hiding her, Queen Keish? Is that's what's being reported? And someone was hiding her in Georgia? I wonder why she went to Georgia. Like, but who would hide somebody and know that they done killed a kid? That's crazy. That's a possibility of you done showed up. You got two, you only showed up with one. That's crazy, yo. I would like to think nobody will hide them. I don't know. This is so crazy. Ah, God. Black parents. Lack of resources all around. Resources that could help. Shit. I don't know what to say. I almost let it go. Looking at them on that's what my ass get. I always want to be on that Al Jazeera. I always want to see everything. I'm like, oh, I wasn't ready for that. I got damn sick. Like, what the fuck? Now, if those kids were that age, and it's just say it got over that, it got that way, got worse than what it was in 3 years. That means that it started out when her ass was there. That house started out like that because if the kid just had a bed on the floor and the girls didn't have nowhere to sleep. And child, and those ain't no goddamn bad looking condos or whatever they are, apartments or whatever they are. I'm looking like, well, damn. What up, sweet babe? But yes, y'all, honey, this is what I want to disrupt y'all life with today. I'm sorry, but I just had to put that back on live, honey. I just could not. I just could not. Mm-mm. I don't know what's going on with their system to protect children. I don't know what's going on with that structure, honey, because it's a lot of moving parts. You have school, you have CPS, you have family, friends, preacher if you have one, and in both cases, it's the landlord. Unbelievable. But yeah, y'all, that is the pack I want to bring y'all today. I'm gonna try to keep up with those stories, probably posting stuff on the wall. Um, I don't know what to say. I was hungry, but I'm too cold and lazy to go get something to eat. I just go to sleep hungry. I don't think I might have to wait anyway after seeing what I saw. Damn, what is going on in Detroit, child? Their system of accountability when it comes to children is no, honey. I mean, like, who goes missing from a school for a year and nobody, and they ain't sending nobody to your house or sending something. And even if they mail, like the, where's the kids? We haven't heard from you. Whatever they send out, right in your area, and they don't get it back because, they send it and they have like a certain amount of time they expect to get it back. That's how they know to trigger the next step of action. Like, ain't none of that. Ain't no system of accountability for none of that. Like, what is the problem? And Detroit isn't the only place, right? Well, we got to do better. We could catch a lot of this shit. If we just give those social workers what they need and get a lot of these systems uploaded with presets in there, we'll catch a lot of this shit. I mean, the kid even told somebody that the mom was gonna kill. All kind of crazy shit, and they was like, "Nah, you gonna stay here with the killer, the woman that's gonna kill you in 6 months. We just gonna leave her with some pamphlets and tell her to make sure she, she keep up with her mental health appointments." Huh? I couldn't have that job. I have so many goddamn people in mental health, in jail, people knocking on your goddamn door every other day, checking on wellness check. Yeah, I couldn't. That's the one job I haven't had. Can't do that. Anyway, y'all, baby, let me get on up out of here. I got my baby sleeping. I'm going to get on up out of here. Hey, make the day a good day. Make tomorrow a better day. Do something good for yourself and someone else, and baby. Let me see. All right, people. I got to get on up out of here, honey. I was back here knocked out. I will holler at y'all some other time. But I'll try to keep up these stories too. All right, y'all. We watching a whole bunch of shit, baby. And this just the second month of the year. And already we done covered news around the world. Planes still falling out the sky. I don't know, honey. I don't know. But anyway, let me share with y'all something. Right? No, I won't share it. Never mind. Maybe some other time. All right. I'll holler at y'all. All right. Bye.